the 360 on Energy and Carbon podcast, hosted by 360 Energy. On today's episode, we have Dr. Rupp Carriveau, who is a director of the Environmental Energy Institute and co-director of the Turbulence and Energy Lab at the University of Windsor. His research activities focus on energy systems futures. Dr. Carriveau serves on the editorial boards of Wind Engineering, Advances in Energy Research, and the International Journal of Sustainable Energy. He recently guest-edited special editions of Energies in the Journal of Energy Storage. Professor Carriveau was a recent recipient of the University Scholar Award and has acted as a research ambassador for the Council of Ontario Universities. Dr. Carriveau is a founder of the Offshore Energy and Storage Society, OSES, and recently co-chaired OSES 2018 in Ningbo, China, and OSES 2019 in Brest, France. Professor Carriveau is chair of the IEEE Ocean Energy Technology Committee and was just named to Canada's Clean 50 2020 for his contributions to clean capitalism. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome back, Dave. I see we're missing your other half today.
Yeah, I think John, he talked about if he could decide how the markets were going, he could be very wealthy. Maybe bet on how the energy markets are going. He made a lot of money. That's maybe where he's gone.
Yeah, he's run
Hopefully
away.
He comes back. Hopefully he comes back.
Well, today we're joined by guest Dr. Rupp Carriveau, professor from University of Windsor. Hi, Dr. Carriveau.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm terrific.
Well, if you could start off the episode by please explaining your career background and your current role at the University of Windsor and what you do with the Environmental Energy Institute, EEI.
Sure. Well, I'll be brief about my career background. After my undergraduate degree, I worked in robotics and automation for 3 years and learned early that traveling for business wasn't the same as traveling for pleasure. And I got a chance to work with some people that had advanced degrees, and I was really impressed with how it sort of changed their level of confidence, and I had an urge to learn more anyway. And so I went back to school and I did graduate work in vortex dynamics, which ultimately led me to everything that spins. I used to say, if it spins, I'm in. So that became wind turbines. So I got a post at the University of Windsor, where I joined the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And not long after that, I started working with an interesting and very wise fellow by the name of Dr. David Ting. And so I had been really working a lot in energy, and David had been working a lot in turbulence. And David founded the Turbulence and Energy Lab, which I co-direct with him in 2012. And so the Turbulence and Energy Lab has really been the engine of a lot of what we've done at the university since then. Around 2017, I started seeing more and more opportunities coming from our, I would say, largely technically dominated projects where we needed a little bit more of a wider focus that potentially, rolled into policy and other regulatory issues. So we had to expand our focus a bit, and I encouraged Dr. Miller to come aboard. So with that, I started the Environmental Energy Institute, and it's continued to grow since then. And all along, even before the formation of the Environmental Energy Institute, we started working with 360 Energy a long time ago. In fact, I can speak to how that and when that started, if you would like.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm looking for it, Rupp, because we have had quite a track record working very closely with yourself.
We have. No, honestly, it's quite remarkable. I remember it actually really well. I had gotten a contract with the then Ontario Power Authority to develop a training program to help people better understand the process of energy management. And while coming from the Turbulence and Energy Lab, we had a very good technical understanding of what energy management was in terms of control algorithms and understanding the thermodynamics in a building and things like that. We really didn't have much in the way of change culture or an understanding of how you actually execute changes in a facility. It's one thing to explain to someone how changing a boiler out will save them money. It's another thing to get them to understand what's required to make that happen and to get buy-in from management. So we were tasked with developing these courses for the province, and we needed instructors and we needed course developers. And I had met Dave. I think I had seen Dave speak at an event. And so I knew who he was, but we didn't have a working relationship yet. I had enough money in this grant to get an assistant. And the assistant was out at an event, and she's like, "Oh, I just saw this guy. He's so polished. I think he'd be great for the course." And I said, "Yeah, what's his name?" And she said, "Oh, it's David Arkell." I said, "I know that guy. Go get him." So I remember Stephanie approached Dave, and she's like, "Oh, he seemed interested, but I don't think we can afford him." I said, "Well, we'll see if we can negotiate." And so Dave was very generous with us, understanding our sort of financial limitations of the project. And he came aboard, and he made it real for us. We had other sort of technical experts on board for different aspects, lighting, HVAC, but there was no change culture. There was no overarching understanding of how billing works or anything like that. And then Dave ultimately also pulled in John Pooley at one point. So our credibility went way up, which was really wonderful. And it really knit the course together nicely. And we had 4 successful outings of that course. I was very proud of that. And so the province was very pleased with those outcomes. And for us, it helped us really get a high level understanding of where the energy management culture was at the time. And that was some time ago. That was over 10 years ago. And things have come a long way. And 360 Energy knows that better than anybody because they've been facilitating those changes. So that's sort of how things got started.
It actually, Rupp, it was the combination of the skills on the technical side that we didn't have and the management techniques that we were encouraging customers. It was really a great match. And hence, that's why we continue to work collectively, because you have skill sets that we don't have, and vice versa. But the market's come a long way, but it still has a lot of opportunity to increase their knowledge base. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity that we did have, and the fact that we did meet with you guys too. I think it's served both of us well, and hopefully society too, by the way.
Oh yeah, no, honestly, Dave, I was just about to comment on that I'm sure you will agree that after we conducted that course and made our way sort of around the province, there was an onrush of interest in competing courses and similar movements that came about.
Yes.
And I know we had sort of moved on to tackle different specific things once we fulfilled our contract requirements there. But there was just a deluge of efforts, and it continues, right? We see it,
Yeah.
So initially I was bummed by that, and then I recognized that it was a compliment to what we had done.
Right.
So you both brought up quite a few great points, and I know a few of our listeners are actually industry members with great research topics that they want to start pursuing. How does industry start working with universities?
Well, great question, Lysandra. I would say industry starts by ultimately, hopefully, identifying sort of the faculty members that they want to work with. You can go through the universities will have a forward-facing sort of research office. That's a good first step as well. But I tend to encourage companies to do a little research on their own if they can, and sometimes get in contact with the faculty members directly, because I have to say it's frustrating and it's challenging. And I understand the challenge on the other side. Those research offices, they have a lot of people to keep track of, so they don't always know who's doing what. And things change quickly too, right? So frankly, talking to both is good. Do your own research, but you can also talk to any university sort of research office and get connected.
I talked briefly, as we go further, we'll talk more of how there's this synergy and benefits that we as a company have attained by working cooperation from you. But I'd be interested in, for other parties, how does industry research partnership actually benefit both parties, meaning the industry partner that you might be working with and for yourself, for the university? Could you explain that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. To me, that list is so long. Like, where to start? I'll start with the simple things that come to mind. Where I try to, sometimes industry isn't aware of the potential benefits of working with the university, because there are differences in potentially collaborating with another company. And one of the first things we like to do is to try to manage expectations, because our workforce is learning all the time. A professional workforce is too, but they have a certain level of maturity, both in terms of what their learning curve and frankly, even their age maturity. It helps. We have students who are dealing with everything, and so that's our workforce. And so it's unrealistic to put sort of around the clock, demands on students who have a lot of other commitments, and we can't pay them the same way that employers pay their employees. So, there are limitations, and so we want to really manage those expectations early on. But once we've done that, I point out some of the things that I think are fantastic. One of the things that we can do is sometimes universities have, in almost a very cliche way, will have very specialized equipment or very specialized facilities that it doesn't make sense for a company to own. It just doesn't make sense for them, or even to try to rent and then try to understand how to operate. A university will have very specialized testing facilities, very specialized areas for experiments, and the specialized people to actually work those. So that's a simple way for a company to go in low risk and enter a collaboration with the university and see benefits from that. Of course, on the other side of that, for the university, it's like a fee for service thing. It's always great. Obviously, everyone needs revenue, and it gets students experience with dealing with real deadlines and being connected to employers. And those are sort of some of the least immersive collaborations that I can think of. But the ones that we tend to go for are where we really want to look at a problem that industry is having, that industry may not have the time or the spatial bandwidth to deal with. So what they can do is, if they are interested, university can come in and you need a lot of time to get to know each other and get to know each other's challenges. And then those problems can be sort of offloaded to the university, where they can be worked on in a way that the time scale is different, but the level of detail and sort of technical approach is different. And it allows the industry to continue with operations, right? And that way, the students really get to see what's required for sort of commercial interests, and they also get to understand sort of what's important in terms of timelines, and that their work it impacts other people as well. It's not just a student working alone in a lab, and if their work ethic falls off, then their thesis is going to be late. The consequences of their actions have wide implications, sort of thing.
It was brought to my attention, there's a book called The Smartest Places in the World, and it talked about how manufacturing our sectors throughout North America, the Rust Belt in North America, a lot of businesses vacated, went to Asia and things of that nature. And it's been re-stimulated because what's happened is industry is working in cooperation with academia to come up with new ideas and how to implement things. And I think that collaboration is so important, because as you just described, I think a lot of industry, they don't have the resources available or the focus that universities and academia has. They could use and capitalize on. There's a lot of benefits to society, their company, and to the region that they might be in. And so it's certainly a really worthy exercise. What are some of the challenges with industry and research partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the number one is unrealistic expectations on both sides. And it's driven by ignorance, and it's unfortunate. And that's why you really need to work on sometimes very small projects in the beginning, if it's possible. And if not, just take time to get to know each other. Maybe you met at an event, visits to facilities, tours, long discussions about what the problems are or what potential collaboration opportunities are. And then full transparent disclosure on what some of the risks would be in the collaboration. That's the number one thing, because it goes both ways. I talked about industries, not understanding that, universities tend to be slower at times. There can be challenges in terms of availability of a workforce or lack of continuity in the workforce. So those are risks. But there's also a lack of understanding on the academic side that I think is actually potentially worse and probably more rampant. And this notion that Industry is available at any time to meet. Industry is available to disclose all data that's necessary to solve the problem at any time. Industry can stop the operation so we can get a better look at what's happening. Right? The academic side doesn't necessarily, depending on how experienced they are in working with industry, they don't appreciate that, again, it's a business that's running and it can't stop for these things. Now, it can when it's deemed necessary and when it's deemed appropriate. And, academics that have lived in a lab, they have complete control over their experiment, right? So they can stop a process, start a process. But again, that's why I really thrive on the industry collaboration, because it's such a spectacular challenge to have all these moving parts and to be useful to each other. It's not a given. It's not a given, and it requires constant attention. And that's the other thing too, is that it's really critical. You want to have regular contact. So again, that we can just make sure that expectations are managed. So there's no surprises, right? But there's so much that can come from it. It's so exciting. I just wanted to add to the last question we had, was that I think one of the other valuable things about that collaboration is you do have people coming from different worlds. And so what tends to happen is you'll get strange questions. And the strange questions are fantastic, because it causes a wind energy operator, you say, well, why would you guys wait till the end of the month to collect that data? Why would you be collecting it on the hour? And they're like, no, that's how we've always done it. I don't know why, right? Or similarly, why are we looking at certain data sets that ultimately are meaningless and they have nothing to do with the operation of the facility, right? That might be some variable that has no importance to the facility, but we just assume because we're academics, we better look at all the data. And then you've got the industry partner there. It's like, actually, we only deal with these three variables. This is all that matters to our operation. So those kind of things are super valuable, and they can't really be taught in the classroom.
Can you give some guidance on how industry can connect with the academia partner, whether it's yourself or other institutions?
Yeah, again, I think most of our contacts generally come through direct emails. I would say probably 80% of our contacts come from direct emails that people have seen a publication that we've authored, or they've seen a press release on some study that's ongoing, or we've spoken at an event, and they will reach out by email. And so I think that's probably the most useful, because we're a smaller institution, and I have a good relationship with our administration, but day to day, I'm still amazed sometimes they don't know what I'm doing. And in fairness, they can't. And it's sort of my own arrogance that I'm like, how do they not understand that I've moved on to this? And then I realized it was something I decided for myself 2 days ago that I was now pursuing. And they're expected to understand that. So it's really always better if you can reach out to the individual. And, that and email seems to be the best. I do know that actually I'm getting more and more things on LinkedIn, something that I've been admittedly slow to engage, because it wasn't really a place for academics. And I try to make myself the industrial academic, but there's only so many platforms you can maintain. The academics.
It's that continuous journey of learning, right, Rupp? That's the whole thing.
It is.
360 Energy and the University of Windsor have been involved in many partnership projects together. I thought it would be insightful to other industry and academia to get into the collaborations you both have done together so far. Could you start off by talking about your collaboration with the ISO for the Grid Innovation Project called Powering Greenhouse Sector Expansion with Distributed Energy Resource Solutions?
Yeah, this one, honestly, for me, I think it kind of defines the evolution of our collaborative relationship. That one of the really nice things about having a long collaboration like we've had with 360 Energy is that we know very well what one another are doing. And a lot of that is because we talk regularly. So either that's because we have an ongoing project, or just our relationship, we can check in anytime. So we saw a funding opportunity and a need. We've been working with greenhouses on our own for quite a few years in sort of the internal energy modeling and external energy system provision modeling for greenhouses. And we also knew that 360 Energy was independently on their own, also working with greenhouses, where they were really helping clients better understand how to manage their energy and giving them options for different energy solutions. So the call came along, and it was, We are power constrained. And as a grid operator, ISO said, can somebody develop some options for us to entertain while we're power constrained? And so we provided a proposal and said, look, we can go through, develop a parameterized model based on very meticulous characterizations of energy demand, and then subsequent design options so that people can look at a desk design level what the options might be. If you want to do a good job on that, you need to really carefully understand how billing works and how market pricing works. That is something that we do not have in-house at all, and is something that I knew was 360's bread and butter, and I knew it was our secret weapon coming to the table, to be honest, in terms of our proposal. And I knew that no one else would have that. As long as we had 360, nobody else would have that. And it's just proven to be even more true as we work through this project. And honestly, the business of you being embedded there, Lysandra, for your internship, it just could not have worked out any better. I saw you getting fantastic learning opportunities. It was bringing immense credibility to our project that was beyond anything I think ISO expected. You know, I can't speak for them, but I mean, I got the sense that they were pleased with the level of detail we were able to provide. And I'm proud of our ongoing progress in that project.
For the greenhouse industry, as you had mentioned, that's half of our business that we focus on. And it appeared, because of the massive growth, that a lot of customers hadn't thought of or didn't understand the impact of grid restrictions. And they tended to rely, not knowing it, or they may rely on consulting in the Netherlands. But the Netherlands didn't have the in-house experience or knowledge of the actual marketplace and the marketplace players. So when you brought that to our attention, it actually filled a gap or a hole that customers were asking us on what they could do. So it was kind of, you talked about the win for you. It was actually, to me, a win not only for the customers, because now we have a number of our customers that are involved in this pilot, and they're continually updated on what this means and what they should be thinking about down the road, which is invaluable for any customer. Like, not many people get that insight or understand and described in detail. But it also allows us to look at other jurisdictions in the greenhouse sector throughout North America, because I believe and expect there'll be same challenges or issues that might happen where there may be grid restrictions or issues. That the learning that is done and being achieved by working collaboration with the university has been invaluable for us to approach and bring that to the marketplace. I do want to reinforce what you said too, Rupp. The idea of us working with the university, and specifically students that are knowledgeable and have experience in that sector and working with us. I'm telling people in our company, this is the model of the future. This is what we need to do in the future, is finding new employees who have that knowledge base and have that passion. And so I would say it's been a really favorable situation for us to be involved in. And I know it's going to serve everyone here in the call, the university, certainly 360 Energy, our clients, but I hope and believe it's going to do the same thing for Lysandra, for her future career as well. But I'd be interested, Lysandra, from your perspective, being a student, what you thought from this process.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on this project for now almost 2 years, and I think throughout the project timeline, I've really gotten to think about how this project couldn't have been done internally at the ISO and received the same amount of results that we have, just for the sole fact that a lot of times I believe a lot more people are open to answering questions to academia rather than companies. And then a lot of times people don't want to give academia the time of the day, but they would give an industry member the time of day. So I think we've created such a great collab, even with, Hydro One and OGVG and ourselves and so many other people. I think on this project already, we've probably had 40 different hands touch it. And I don't think many people can say that about a project in this kind of timeline with this kind of result. So I do think that's probably been my favorite part of this project, is getting so many inputs and actually seeing that the results we're saying and the results we're giving are realistic, and there's so much more work that can be done with the work that we've already started.
I want to pick up on what you said because the networking, you're absolutely right. The people that we have met through this process, many of these people we didn't know before. So, wow, it's that has been helpful and will be helpful for us and for our customers as well. So it's really a great point.
Yeah, and I would want to say, like, even going to those greenhouses and visiting, just like greenhouses, the owners and the growers were so open to explaining to me because I am a student that I feel like I really got the full picture. Whereas, when someone more experienced comes in, maybe they don't feel like they can ask those questions and they don't get the full picture of how the greenhouse is operating. So I do think it's been really, I've been on the beneficial side of both ends for sure.
And I'll say this too, Roop. I don't know if I've conveyed this to you directly, but actually, it's actually enhanced, and we've developed new products because of this whole exposure as well. So for listeners, I just want to make sure they understand that there's a lot of upside to participating with players like yourself that have that exposure and experience for sure.
Whereas sometimes I think some collaborations just go by the wayside with some folks, and they don't see how to pick it up and capitalize on it. And so you guys do that really well. The other thing, and I think other people could take, and again, I understand that's your competitive advantage, but I think that's fascinating, and I look at it all the time. And I think about it because there's even room for it in our world to do more of that. But the other thing I just want to say before we pass this point was that sometimes large organizations, just because of the inertia and they offer the regulatory side of things, they can come off a little bit vilified, and I don't want that to be the case here. As we talk about our friends at ISO, right? We want to remind everybody that, Lysandra mentioned that ISO may not have been able to achieve the same outcomes on their own. I think they were well aware of that, and that's why they had the foresight to create this call and said, let's go out and find the people who are doing this kind of work and let them get in there, and we'll develop a contract so that they can educate us. So I think we do need to give them some credit, not only for providing the funding for the project, but really sort of maintaining the priorities of what is important to them as an organization, and being sure that they can be informed as they continue to evolve their service to the sector.
So I know there's a number of things we're going to talk about here to reinforce what you're saying about the value of being associated with a partner like the ISO as well.
This brings me to my next ask. Could you talk about your collaboration with modeling the grid impact of long-haul electric vehicles in Ontario?
Yeah, happily. That's an exciting one because it's quite new and moving quickly. It's such an exciting place to be. So it's actually connected to the former project that we just discussed. So that same ISO contribution from the Grid Innovation Fund was eligible to be matched by national funding from MyTax. So we developed a proposal in collaboration and discussion with the ISO, mentioned that truly electric big rigs, as massive as they can be, represent distributed energy resources. And so we said ultimately these are a peripheral but connected part of our original project. And so ISO said sure, and MyTax saw it as a competitive and useful, innovative study. So they provided us some funding, which was wonderful. And again, in order to do this properly, you really need to understand how energy is consumed at the customer level. And no one understands that better than 360. They've been doing it for as long as they've been in existence. Our goal was to see if you snapped your finger today and you were able to turn every diesel transport truck in Ontario to a fully electric truck, what would the impact be on the grid? The premise of the project was to see what will it look like to the province if these trucks become fully electrified. There, of course, is another side to that, right? And that is that while these could be assets that can be moving around and actually backfeeding the grid with different services at different times, that most people, when they think of that, say, oh, economically, I don't think that'll work. But we think otherwise, that at least it's worth looking at. There could be scenarios where it actually is valuable. We all know 360 more than anybody that very strange things can happen on the billing side because of certain rules and policies and market situations where it could be convenient or economically beneficial to have these kind of strategic services provided by a portable, massive battery. And for us to really drill down into those opportunities, you need a detailed case study. We've managed to secure one of the largest growers in the region as a major partner, and we're looking at major retailers on the other end of that trip. So we're looking at the logistics, when and where the trucks go, how many trucks, how long do they sit, what are they hauling, for how long, and then we're looking at the energy profiles of the sort of source, the grower source down to the retailer, and where are the opportunities for energy trading as they go along in a sort of Internet of Things connected world.
It really is a very exciting project, which I'm not convinced many consumers or society recognize what this would mean and how it could help or positively impact society. And as you said, Rupp, I think many customers get locked and don't move because they don't actually understand the economics or the impact. And so we're excited to be involved just to see that and to figure out if there's challenges or obstacles, what can be done by the customer in this. And I was just speaking to one of our large customers, conveying to them that, boy, have you factored how much you're going to be charging, the frequency, what it's going to cost. So the fact that you're going down this pathway, I think we'll be able to share a lot of knowledge and understanding how the marketplace can manifest and encourage this transition quicker. I do believe there's going to be some real upside by having this knowledge and being exposed to this for the marketplace as well.
Yeah, that's encouraging, Dave. That's really interesting, fascinating. I'm excited to hear that one of your clients has made that commitment. That's a massive commitment, and it's a leap, right? Let's be clear, that's a leap. But that's great, and I think it reminded me of a point I wanted to make even in our earlier discussions, was that these collaborations and these studies, people will have, notions that, well, there's going to be a lot of barriers. And when you guys finish this feasibility study or whatever you want to call it, you're going to see that there's a ton of obstacles, right? And oftentimes they're right. But the advantage is they're quantified. And then we can say, oh, this is what's in the way of this moving forward. Is it a policy piece? Is it just the economics aren't there? Or is it the technology isn't there yet? But we've identified it. And then what people fail to understand is if it's progressive enough and if it's important enough, government can be made aware and can pull the project forward. And that's happened before. We've done this before with other collaborations, and people don't understand that. And I mean, in many ways, like it or not like it, the Ontario wind industry was pulled forward by the government, and it's very controversial, but say what you will, it advanced wind across Canada. It advanced wind globally in many respects. People don't understand the impact that had. So again, when you start one of these studies, you're really beginning to not just identify that, oh, there'll be some problems, but what they are and what the potential workarounds are. Like, that's the part that's exciting to me.
Lastly, Dave, I know you wanted to touch on energy modeling as well.
Yeah, I'll start this off. Rupp, anytime we work with customers, the key point is that we actually have to have data, and we have to understand how they use energy and then what drives their energy usage and what can they do, what can't they do. And if you could to share what you can share on the modeling on energy and how that is being used to perhaps help change or assist in the transition of this new world that we're going to live in going forward.
I'd be happy to, and I'm glad you asked about it. Yeah, I'd say a couple of years ago, I think, we started this initiative we called the Climate-Led Energy Evolution Network, which spells out CLEAN 2040. And the notion being that, can we map what could happen and we just picked, you can go at the system operator level, you could go at the utility level, you could go at the business or household level. We kind of started with and focused on the utility level because it sort of is where all the action happens ultimately. You've got stakeholders above you, you've got stakeholders below you, you've got stakeholders out to the side of you. So that seemed to be sort of the place to focus. And so this Clean 2040 effort was, we tried to build a network of stakeholders that included universities, industry partners like 360 Energy, a number of utilities. And we built a model up that was really, in its essence, a very simple thing. It was really a visualization of a utility's load curve That's ultimately all it was. And I was really proud of how simple it was. Now, it was complex in its function because it had to pay attention to a lot of things, but ultimately we were visualizing a utilities load curve. And then great research by our graduate student at the time allowed us to basically attach a bunch of sliders and dials to say, okay, here's this utilities load curve, and it's based on all of their real customer data, which I can tell you was no small task. There's obviously privacy concerns, and for the utility, it's a lot of work to pull that data together. So there was a lot of persuasion required, but we had some fantastic utility partners, and I will name names because they've been really, really good to us. Toronto Hydro and NWin and Essex Energy were particularly good to us. And so with their data, we were able to build up modifiers. So what happens when you plug an EV in to this substation, or ultimately this transformer at this street level, propagating up to this substation? How does that affect their load curve, right? And we would use more aggregate descriptors than that because we couldn't get that granular at this level. But effectively what we could do is 20% of your city is now plugging in EVs. Here's your new load curve. 60% of your city, 60% of your commercial operations now have solar panels on the roof. Here's your new load curve, right? Well, what happens to you, DeFasco, if you bring on a whole bunch of cogen, or you bring on this, or so it was neat. And what we were working on most recently is trying to build in environmental factors in that as well, because that is where a lot of things are going, right? Well, how does your carbon footprint change if you make this move from solar to, or from cogen to solar, or whatever it is, where that's possible, right? So that was kind of what the essence of the modeling effort was. And so it was credible, peer-reviewed, credible sort of work.
And so this modeling, when you put in front of customers and you do what if analysis, they would start going, they would open the door on, wow, you mean, so things would be real. And that would mean that they could actually manage energy. And I think it's kind of the future of what's going on. So it was a great exercise to be involved in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to hear that, Dave. I mean, it makes it real for us to hear that you see value in that kind of work.
Well, quite a few excellent projects between 360 Energy and the University of Windsor. Dave, anything to conclude this off?
As we go through this, and actually I haven't had a chance to reflect as we go through, I'm going, wow. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff that we've done, and we're still not done.
No.
Rupp, I think you would admit. But I feel I'm very grateful and very fortunate to believe that we're working in cooperation with you guys. And I look forward to work with yourselves and other institutions going forward, because I think we're going to have to do things right and do it faster than we've ever done before. There's a resource that we can or should be using, not only ourselves, although I'd like to keep it to ourselves, but the rest of the world should be aware and work with the universities as well. So.
And if I could, I wanted to offer one more thing that I think is super valuable, and I don't know how I've missed to this point, about the value of the collaboration. Sort of some of the ultimate outcomes are really, really, really helpful that I missed. And that is that if we've done our job right and we've had a good industry collaboration, and that industry has benefited from the collaboration, and maybe their bottom line has benefited sufficiently, they will hire our student, right? Now we have a direct in at that company, and they are in a position now that new employee understands the university system better than anyone else because they've come from it so recently, and they've got the direct contacts. And then the industry has taken on somebody now who has that skill set in-house, right? Who, if something gets beyond them, they can go back to the university for more support. So for us, that's really represents true success. If we see our graduates going out to work with our industrial partners, obviously the graduate is a direct immediate beneficiary of that. We benefit from that because now we have this dendritic network of family out in industry, and that's where I hope things go for us, and that to me represents real success. And we're seeing small examples of that now. It takes a long time, and the fact that 360 has engaged our interns and has looked at our graduates, we're really grateful for. So thanks very much for the time today.
Rupp, I really appreciate your time. I think we covered a lot of material, stuff I had forgotten. And Lysandra, thank you for bringing this all together. As Rupp said, perfect example of someone who's come from your school, but is so valuable in the work that we're doing and the messaging we're trying to get across to the marketplace. This is a real life example with Lysandra taking on this work. So thank you, everyone, for this.
Thank you, and have a great week.
Yeah, you too, guys. See you.
That's all for today's episode of the 360 on Energy and Carbon podcast. Thanks for listening. Make sure to check us out on our website at 360energy.net and follow us on LinkedIn at 360energy Inc. Tune into our podcast on Apple Music and Spotify by searching the 360 on Energy and Carbon. You can watch the video recording and subscribe on YouTube at 360 Energy Inc. See you next week.